Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take a whole stack of sources, pull out the really important bits, and turn them into a clear conversation just for you.
Yeah, hope we're making sense of some complex stuff.
Exactly. And today, we're plunging into a nation that's, well, fascinated scholars for decades. Pakistan. It's a place defined by these really deep paradoxes, you know? A nation where the actual idea of its existence often clashes with the reality of the state.
It really is a land of striking contradictions. I mean, take Stephen Cohen. Here's a scholar, 44 years studying Pakistan.
Wow, 44 years.
Yeah. And he concludes his own idea of Pakistan was wildly inaccurate. Not better, not worse, just different.
Different. That says a lot.
It does. And you see this kind of thing everywhere, like General Zia-ul-Haq banning Cohen's book,
right?
Only to then, unban it later. It just shows these layers of complexity we're hoping to unpack today.
And that complexity is exactly what Cohen's research in the idea of Pakistan helps us with.
Yeah.
So our mission here really is to explore this dual biography. You've got the aspirational idea, this vision of a Muslim homeland its founders had. And then there's the turbulent, often military-dominated state of Pakistan that actually exists.
It's a reality on the ground.
Exactly. So we'll dig into the history, the internal dynamics, external relationships, all the stuff that shaped it, hopefully helping you understand the why behind its, well, contested identity and pretty unpredictable future.
It's definitely a compelling story, constant redefinition, history weighing heavily on everything.
Okay, so let's dive in. The very birth of the idea, it starts with this notion, right, that India's Muslims needed their own homeland.
Yeah, a safe space, basically. Protection for their culture, their destiny, from being swamped in a Hindu-majority India.
And you can trace this back. Institutions like Aligarh Muslim University, way back in 1875.
Right.
And then the Muslim League in 1906. But initially, they were more concerned about Muslims within India, weren't they? Not necessarily a separate country at first.
Exactly. It was about safeguarding rights within the existing structure. That concern, though, it sort of morphed over time into demanding actual sovereignty.
When did that shift really happen?
Well, a key moment is 1930. Muhammad Iqbal, the poet-politician, he's the first to really conceptualize a separate Muslim state in a major way.
Okay.
Then, just 3 years later, you get the name Pakistan, coined by Indian students at Cambridge, creatively using letters from provinces, Punjab, Afghanistan, Kashmir, Baluchistan.
Amber.
And it had this dual meaning, too. Land of the pure, which was, a subtle little jab at high caste Hindus in the Indian National Congress. So it's geographic and ideological from the get-go.
And the idea starts picking up steam.
It does. The Muslim League officially backs it in 1940 at their Lahore session. Big moment.
Right.
And just a year after that, you see the founding of Jamaat-Islami, this powerful religious group. They become really important later in defining Islamic identity.
But, and this is crucial, not all Muslims are on board, right?
Not at all. That's a fundamental point. You had prominent Indian Muslims, people like Bajuddin Tyabji, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. They completely rejected the idea.
They stayed loyal to the Indian National Congress.
Exactly. So right from the beginning, you have these internal divisions among Muslims about this whole concept. It wasn't universally accepted, even at its birth.
Which leads us straight to Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Pakistan's Quaid-e-Azam, the great leader.
Yeah, the foundational figure. Started out as a secular lawyer, a brilliant political mind.
But his vision, it gets complicated, doesn't it? Especially compared to Iqbal.
Very nuanced. Jinnah's later vision, particularly post-independence, seems more focused on Pakistan as a secular nation for Indian Muslims.
Okay.
Whereas Iqbal's earlier idea was perhaps more theological, seeing it as a step towards a larger Islamic community, an ummah.
So a built-in tension right there.
Absolutely, a kind of contradictory foundation. And, B.R. Ambedkar, who later drafted India's constitution, he saw this coming. Back in the late 30s, he said Hindus and Muslims were on a collision course.
Preparing for war in terms of institutions.
Yeah, basically building competing structures. That's how he saw it.
And that collision course leads to partition. But what's amazing is Jinnah's speeches after independence.
Right. He very clearly, very secularly urged all citizens, Hindu, Sikh, Christian, Muslim, forget the past, work together, equal rights for everyone.
He warned that without tolerance, the state would be in peril.
He did, a really insightful warning given everything that followed.
Because the actual implementation of partition in 47, it was just chaotic.
Understatement. It created this geographically bizarre state. Two wings separated by 1,000 miles of India.
which many Indian leaders thought, or maybe hoped, wouldn't even last.
Pretty much. And the immediate fallout inside Pakistan was huge. It completely redrew the power map.
How so?
Well, this massive migration, it wasn't just people moving. You had educated urban Urdu speakers from India, the Mohajirs pouring in.
Okay.
And they quickly took control of government jobs, businesses, sidelining the traditional Punjabi and Pathan elites in West Pakistan.
So instant new power structures, but also new tensions.
Exactly. Seeds of future ethnic conflict sown right at the nation's birth, a direct consequence.
And then the violence of partition itself, plus the later wars with India in 65 and 71, that must have hardened attitudes.
Absolutely. It solidified the conviction among this new Pakistani elite that, yes, a separate country was justified. It had to be defended.
So it shifts from just being a homeland to something else.
Precisely. It becomes this idea of an armed redoubt, a fortress, staunchly defended by the army, primarily against India.
And Kashmir becomes central to that mindset.
Totally central. Not just a territorial dispute, but a core reason, a catalyst for this fortress Pakistan identity.
Which brings us neatly to the state of Pakistan and the army's role. Jinnah dies early, 1948. Liaquat Ali Khan, the first PM, assassinated in 51. That leaves a vacuum.
A huge political void. Leads to chaos, instability, and eventually who steps in? A coalition of emigre politicians, bureaucrats, and critically, the army.
They start seeking alliances early on, right? U.S. defense agreements in 54, joining CO, CENTO.
Yeah, looking for security guarantees. But the crunch comes in the 65 war with India.
Those alliances didn't help much.
Not really, not in practical terms. A big lesson for Pakistan about needing self-reliance, you know?
And this context, this instability, sets the stage for the first big military intervention.
It does. General Ayub Khan's coup in 1958. And that, unfortunately, sets a powerful precedent, military stepping in.
His idea was a tutelary regime. What does that mean?
Basically, the army guiding the nation like a guardian. He wanted an intellectually coherent and administratively effective Pakistan, kind of mirroring the British Raj's ma-bop, mother-father role, paternalistic.
And he solidifies this establishment?
Oh, absolutely. This powerful triad, army, bureaucracy, and the big feudal landlords, they become the dominant force in politics and society, a structure that proves incredibly difficult to shift.
But Ayub's era doesn't last forever. His health declines, there's unrest after the 65 war.
Right, and he had this, frankly, ill-advised view of East Pakistan being militarily expendable. All this culminates in General Yahya Khan seizing power in 1969.
And Yahya makes a fateful decision regarding the 1971 elections.
Huge mistake. The Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman from East Pakistan, wins a decisive victory. Yahya refuses to let him become prime minister.
Which leads to
military crackdowns in the east, Mujibur declaring Bangladesh's independence, and then another devastating war with India.
The consequences must have been profound.
Immense. Pakistan loses over half its population. The state's whole nature changes. East Bengal's more moderate Islam, its diverse culture, gone.
And Punjab becomes even more dominant.
Yes, economically, militarily, Punjab's dominance is cemented.
And you mentioned an irony here.
Yeah, the separation of East Pakistan paradoxically ends up strengthening the most regressive and conservative Islamists back in what was left, West Pakistan.
So into this dramatically changed landscape steps Zulfikar Ali Bhutto.
Right, a very charismatic, populist leader. He tries to push back against the military. He reorganizes command structures, creates his own paramilitary force, the Federal Security Force, FSF, and crucially initiates the nuclear weapons program.
The nuclear program was meant to reduce the army's role.
That was part of the thinking, yeah. To give Pakistan strategic weight without relying solely on conventional military power, which the army controlled.
But the irony.
The ultimate irony. The nuclear program, intended to be civilian-controlled, ends up being taken over by the army itself.
Setting the stage for another coup.
Exactly. General Zia-ul-Haq in 1977. And Zia is different. He's the first leader to really earnestly pursue Islamization.
He reinterprets Jinnah as an Islamist. That's controversial.
Hugely controversial. And he elevates the ulema, the religious scholars who weren't really central to Pakistan's founding. Islam becomes a strategic tool for him.
How so? Domestically and internationally?
Both. Domestically against opponents like Bhutto's PPP, internationally famously channeling U.S. aid to the Afghan Mujahideen fighting the Soviets, using Islam as a strategic asset.
Then comes the Democratic decade, 88 to 99. Benazir Bhutto, Nawaz Sharif.
Yeah, civilian governments, but they constantly struggle. The army's influence is just pervasive. They can't build strong enough coalitions to tackle Pakistan's big problems.
Which leads to another coup.
General Pervez Musharraf in 1999. And interestingly, some people actually welcomed it initially.
Why?
Frustration with the civilian chaos, maybe? Musharraf positioned his rule as liberal and humane, trying to echo Ayub Khan's tutelary style.
So the army keeps coming back. What's their justification?
Well, over the years, they've built this narrative, right? Their sheer professional competence, their undeniable patriotism versus the alleged incompetence and corruption of the politicians.
But there's a counter-narrative now.
Increasingly, yes. People are questioning the military's own efficiency, its own honesty, especially concerning its huge economic empire.
Military farms, factories, foundations.
Exactly. Vast, often unaccountable, subsidized businesses. And there's a lack of public scrutiny. It raises questions about who really benefits. A deep paradox, given their claims of competence.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit to Islam's role. This is so central, isn't it, the tension? Is Pakistan a state for Muslims or an Islamic state?
That's the core ideological dilemma, and it's never really been resolved. And figures like Maulana Maududi are absolutely key here.
Founder of Jama-e-Islami.
Right. He saw his group as the vanguard of an Islamic revolution. Their goal was to perfect Pakistan along strict Islamic lines.
And Zia-ul-Haq really pushed this forward.
Dramatically deepened it, as we said, bringing the religious scholars, the ulema, who had been kind of peripheral, right into the heart of state power, using Islam strategically.
And the army itself.
Yeah.
It changed, too, from secular beginnings.
There's been an evolution. While it might present as secular institutionally, there's definitely visible, increasing support for Islamic forces within its ranks. You see links between retired generals and Islamist groups.
A subtle but significant shift.
Yeah. And if you look at the broader military worldview, it's complex. Individual officers vary in piety, of course.
Sure.
But institutionally, there's often this framing India as a Hindu threat, maybe backed by Christian and Zionist powers.
And Pakistan is the lone defender?
Position as the defender of a higher Islamic ideal. And this connects to something quite startling in the source material.
What's that?
How some officers apparently interpret passages from the Quran to justify terror, and they use that word as a legitimate instrument of state power.
Terror? In what sense?
Applying it to both conventional and nuclear warfare, primarily as a deterrent strategy. It's a potent and surprising reinterpretation of religious texts for state policy.
Wow. That really highlights the complex mix of religion and state power. And it brings us to the rise of radical Islam.
Which was definitely fueled by Zia's policies. You saw this proliferation of sectarian groups, religious groups.
Yeah.
It's something Pakistan is still grappling with massively today.
And the Madaris, the religious schools.
Explosive growth. From maybe 250 at partition to potentially 45,000 now. That number's debated, but it's huge.
And the concern is a type of education.
Yeah, sadly, many are accused of promoting really virulent hatred, some even offering military training. It creates this pool of young people who are often, frankly, unemployable and practically uneducated for the modern world.
What fuels this militancy, besides the Madaris?
Well, the sources point to a few things. The Madaris are one factor. Also, the unsophisticated political views of some Western-educated elites who perhaps romanticize certain aspects. And then there's this broader ideological framework that declares war on the West, sees it as a civilizational enemy.
And we saw this translate into politics, didn't we?
Yeah.
With the MMA alliance in 2002.
That was unexpected electoral success, yeah. Especially in the Pashtun areas and WFP, Baluchistan, largely driven by anti-American feeling after 9/11 and the mainstream parties being in disarray.
And the links to groups like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban.
Incredibly complex and murky. Pakistan officially dropped the Taliban after 9/11, of course. But some Islamist parties within Pakistan continue supporting other Pashtun groups. It shows a deeply conflicted, sometimes contradictory approach.
But do these radical groups have widespread support?
Generally, no. That's important context. They pose a real threat. They have influence. But broad political support isn't really there. Their extreme vision often clashes with the military's more institutional, arguably more secular goals. That creates a kind of internal check, maybe.
Okay, moving beyond religion, let's talk about regionalism. These internal fissures. Jinnah's vision was unity, right? transcending ethnicity.
That was the ideal. Bengali, Baluch, Punjabi, Sindhi, Pashtun, all part of one new nation.
But the reality,
The harsh reality, the paradox, is that the homeland idea actually ended up fostering separatism when equality within Pakistan proved elusive.
leading to this dangerous idea of Pakistan being potentially 2, 3, or even 4 nations.
Exactly. A stark contrast to the original dream. Deep internal fragmentation.
Let's look at specifics. Sindh, for instance. Karachi's transformation.
Huge transformation. It went from being mainly Sindhi to this melting pot marked by intense rivalry, social upheaval, and terrible sectarian violence, often targeting Shia professionals, largely driven by the influx of Muhajirs we talked about earlier.
And this led to political movements.
Yeah, back in 1972, a big movement demanding Sindhi be the language of instruction, even advocating for a confederation of 4 nations.
And the Muhajirs themselves, they formed their own identity.
Very much so. Solidified when Urdu became the national language and Karachi the capital. But they also had this deep fear of abandonment.
Especially after what happened to the Biharis in Bangladesh.
Precisely. That experience haunted them. It was a key driver for forming the MQM, the Mutahida Qawmi movement, in 1984 to protect their specific interests.
Okay, let's go north. Pashtun nationalism.
In the NWFP, yeah. The old Pakhtunistan movement sort of faded for a while.
But it came back.
Roared back after 9/11, driven by anger over U.S. actions in Afghanistan and what they saw as Pakistani complicity.
And that fueled the Islamist government there in 2002.
Significantly contributed, yes, and raised this prospect of separatism based on religion, potential clashes with Afghanistan, another layer of tension.
And Baluchistan?
Baluch separatism is persistent, driven by a very distinct culture and history. They might have limited resources, but the sentiment is strong. Another long-running internal challenge.
And underpinning a lot of this regional resentment is
Punjabi dominance. You hear it constantly from Sindhi and Baluch intellectuals. They blame militaristic Punjabi leaders for keeping a huge army and using foreign policy to control the smaller provinces.
And this is even taught in the military.
According to the source, yes. The Staff College apparently teaches that Punjab is the heartland and the other provinces are just invasion routes.
Wow.
It's a perspective that really reinforces Punjabi dominance and makes structural reforms, like maybe breaking up provinces into smaller, more manageable units, very difficult, even if it might be more efficient.
So all these factors, the identity crisis, the military's role, regionalism, what does it mean for the future? Let's look at the big challenges. Demographics.
A huge one. Pakistan has this serious demographic plight. High population growth, massive youth bulge, tons of people in that 15-24 age group.
Which can be destabilizing.
Potentially, yes, especially when combined with low education levels and often resistance to family planning. It's a volatile mix. Social unrest waiting to happen, some argue.
And education itself is a problem.
A massive problem. Primary rural schools are described as wretched, often lacking basics, clean water, toilets, just long-term neglect across different governments.
Why? Military budgets taking priority.
That's a big part of it, according to Cohen. And you get this growing gap between the elite private English language schools for the rich and the rapidly expanding madaris, often serving poorer communities. It just widens the social divides.
Okay, demographics, education. What about the economy? Structural problems there too.
Big time. It's another paradox, isn't it? They can build nuclear weapons, advanced missiles, but they lack basic industrial capacity, a diverse manufacturing base beyond textiles. It's skewed.
And debt.
Soaring national debt. Went from about $3 billion in 1970 to $34 billion by 1999. A lot of the economic growth seems like a house of cards. Meaning it's heavily reliant on external aid, money sent home by Pakistanis working abroad, rather than strong, sustainable internal economic engines.
And the internal roadblocks. Feudal landlords.
Still incredibly powerful. They resist land reform, resist agricultural taxes. Even newer ideas like corporate farming might just push more people off the land into cities, creating new problems. It's hard to get fundamental reform done.
And the military's economic role again?
It comes up again. These vast, unaccountable, subsidized businesses. The critique is they mainly benefit retired officers, not the broader economy or employment. A drain on resources largely hidden from view.
Okay, let's touch on foreign policy. Kashmir. It's more than just territory, isn't it?
Deeply, deeply intertwined with Pakistan's national identity. Cohen calls it almost a curse that's held back development, and it's a key justification for the nuclear program.
As a counter to India. A strategic umbrella.
Exactly. That's the rationale. Gives them status, deterrence.
But there's an irony about the nuclear program itself.
Yeah, the source suggests that while it grants status, it was largely a triumph of espionage and assistance from a friendly power, not necessarily homegrown genius across the board.
Fostering a delusion of broader technological capability.
Perhaps a mismatch between that specific achievement and general industrial capacity. Meanwhile, the U.S. relationship. It's been a roller coaster.
Frontline state after 9/11. Lots of aid.
Yes, but always shattered by concerns. Could Pakistan become a rogue state? Will it support terrorism? Will it proliferate nuclear tech? Constant worries for the U.S.
And how is the U.S. viewed within Pakistan?
Increasingly, especially among the middle and upper classes, there's this Arab view, as Cohen puts it, seeing the U.S. as allied with Israel and Hindu India.
Posing a civilizational threat.
That's the perception for some, a deep mistrust that complicates everything.
So looking ahead, what are the possible paths for Pakistan? It sounds challenging.
Very challenging. One scenario is just more of the same. An oligarchic system muddling through, held together by elite cohesion, the army's power, and a weak opposition.
Or things could get worse. Authoritarianism. Breakup.
Those are possibilities raised. Authoritarianism, maybe even a breakup like East Pakistan, though that would require extreme conditions.
What about becoming a full-fledged Islamic state?
Islamist forces are definitely growing, but an Iranian-style revolution. Cohen thinks that's unlikely unless the military becomes much, much weaker and heavily infiltrated by revolutionaries, which isn't the case now.
So the most difficult path is becoming normal.
Becoming a normal state at peace with its neighbors and itself. That's the ideal, but it's incredibly hard. It means reigning in the army's deep political and economic power.
And civilian leaders stepping up.
Demonstrating unprecedented competence, unity, things that have often been lacking.
It's interesting. The source draws parallels to Israel, even the U.S.
Yeah, struggles in reconciling democracy with being founded as homelands for threatened religious groups. Pakistan has its own unique version of that struggle, especially with its own minority sects. Makes it even tougher.
And the source suggests some U.S. policy approaches.
It does. Continuing to combat terrorism is one, but acknowledging Pakistan's complex position, sometimes supporting certain groups, how do you navigate that?
Tricky balance.
Very. Another idea is countering retrograde Islamism, not by suppressing Madaris directly, which could backfire,
Right.
but by supporting broader education, alternative ideas, fighting the ideological battle.
Conjugate.
Yes, but linking it clearly to structural reforms, encouraging transparency, sustainable growth, not just propping things up.
And promoting peace with India.
Actively. Focusing talks maybe less on the impossible sovereignty question over Kashmir and more on improving the actual lives and human rights of Kashmiris on the ground. Practical steps. So when you step back and look at all this, the deep structural problems, the nuclear weapons, the whole historical journey, how should we think about Pakistan's future?
It's a huge question.
It is. And for you listening, how do you imagine it? Is Pakistan kind of destined to be this mini power on the march, always caught between its Islamic identity and trying to modernize?
Or could something new emerge? A different vision?
Could there be a bold new vision that finally reconciles this contested past with a more stable, prosperous future, not just for Pakistan, but for the whole region?
Lots to think about. What critical thinking will you apply to the ongoing story of this really fascinating and incredibly important nation?